10 strangers are summoned by letter to Soldier Island, an isolated spot off the coast of England where sits a storied mansion hidden from the mainland. Some arrive expecting a party, others a relaxing retreat. Some even expect to be employed by the hosts. However, soon they realize that none of them actually knows why they've been invited or the identity of their host. The only thing that's clear is this: one of them is a fiendish murderer. Will they find the killer before it's too late, or will they all, one by one, meet their end? The author, Agatha Christie. The book, And Then There Were None. And you're listening to Lit Society. Let's get lit! This is Kari.
And this is Alexis.
And you're listening to Lit Society, a show about books and drama. Alexis, how are you today?
Girl, I have been in quarantine.
Well, let's just tell the truth.
Tuesday.
I made a collect call to the Cook County Correctional Facility. You accepted. Thank you. Because the podcast must go on. I don't care what crimes you've been involved in. Thank you for being a professional. Right. Let me know when the warden...
it might chime in and disconnect us, okay?
It will do that. Oh, we both have experience with these type of calls, I see. But they warn you first. They'll go, you have 3 minutes left. And you can't even pay to take a longer call. What if I got something to say? Your mama did. Now
they gotta call back, and you should have said it
in the beginning. You know, I want to ease into those type of conversations. Anyway, well, yeah, we're on house arrest. Mm-hmm. Can you believe it? Yeah. Your village was the first, and then the entire state has a shelter in place. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah, for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Right. Yep. Ours, so far they're saying ours will discontinue on the 3rd of April, but the state actually shutting down April 7th.
Right.
I'm affected anyway. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So
one by the state.
So basically, your village's mandate is dissolved because it's like superseded by the state of Illinois. Mm-hmm. Well, the hospital in our neighborhood, there was someone diagnosed with COVID. So, but I hear he's at home getting better. But then there was a rumor that a doctor and some nurses were testing positive, and then that rumor was proved true later. I guess it was 2 doctors tested positive. So yeah, interesting times. Did you ever think we'd be in a situation like this?
No, I wouldn't have been able to imagine it. Since we're both in this, I could still ask you how you're doing in your situation.
Well, okay, first of all, I feel really sorry for like small business owners and giggers who like photographers and, freelancers who require that check to check and that constant flow of income.
Right.
But just being at home and having to be at home and knowing being able to like argue with you about it, it's been great. I am getting a little bored, and it's only been day 2, but I've cooked a lot. I'm freezing. As soon as I can cook it and freeze it, my husband is eating it. So we won't have any food, I'm guessing, in like 3 days. But other than that.
When you're home, you're a different kind of hungry. That's all there is to it.
Because there's nothing to do. Might as well eat a steak. Yeah, it's crazy. What about you?
How you doing? First couple of days, I had a steak. I had lobster. A couple of days later, I had crab legs.
Because you deserve it.
Crab boil. Yeah. I think I'm going to be 50 pounds heavier, but I'm trying to fight against it.
That's everyone's fear. How do you not blow up? This is the fear. Well, I'm going running today. Because ain't nobody out there. And so it's just going to be me and COVIDia running through the streets. Coronavirus! It's going to be fine. We'll make it work.
I did take a walk. I've been taking walks this week.
Oh, that's good. Is there anyone out when you're walking?
People walking their dogs. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, the dog's got to get out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, listen. We have a show to run. and we're professionals, so we gonna do it. I mean, at first I was like, so when are you coming by for us to record? And you told me,
you were serious.
No,
about that.
I will not be doing that because of the coronavirus. And I said, oh, wow, she's being hysterical. It's a shame. It really is a shame. Cooler heads prevailed. And I'm glad you made this adult decision. And we were able to make it work. So apologies to the readers for the audio quality. You know, we're sticklers about that, but we're doing our best.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It ain't good either.
Well, you'll make it great.
All right. Well, let's move on.
So.
And there's also a delay, but that's okay. So the theme of the week. Each week, readers, we select a theme to discuss, usually inspired by the book we're reading, but this week we're going to switch it up. And the theme is 6 ways to get new books from home during a global pandemic. Number 1, Scribd. Have you heard of Scribd?
Yeah.
Okay, that's spelled S as in Sam, C as in Charlie, R-I-B as in boy, D as in David, Scribd.com. Yeah. And this website is a source for audiobooks and magazines and even newspapers you can get. The point of Scribd, it's supposed to be like the direct competitor of Audible and Kindle Unlimited. There's a free month trial and then $8.99 a month, which is less, even significantly less than subscriptions offered by other publishers or book providers. So that's their thing, really, the unlimited magazines and news and unlimited audiobooks from major publishers. Again, 30-day free trial, then $8.99 per month, Scribd.com. Number 2, this is going to make everyone groan, but I have to say Amazon. I'm not pushing the support of it, but quite frankly, I use a Kindle or I use a tablet with a Kindle app. And as much as we support our indie bookstores and libraries, I, once a month am buying something off of Amazon or not buying. Because if you guys want to come a little closer, I'll tell you a secret. Are you listening, Alexa?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can just return or exchange a book you've already read on your Kindle. You guys, in theory, you buy one book on Kindle and you set for the rest of your life, I guess. So I hope this is on the level. I hope this is on the level. But
you've done it before, right?
Girl, yeah. What are you talking about? It's all I do. In fact, I went to cancel my Audible subscription. Now, you may know that Audible is a child of Amazon. It's their audiobook app. And audiobooks can be crazy expensive. For example, we just reviewed The Warmth of Other Suns. I bought that book, but I didn't have time to sit and read every page. I needed an audiobook to supplement my reading. And I didn't want to pay $31, which was the price. So I returned number 1 Ladies Detective Agency, which I've decided I hate that book. I know. I'm so sorry. We'll talk about it later.
We're going to read it
it's
now.
Garbage.
We're going to read it now.
We ain't got to do that.
You want to get it back.
But I'm glad you made me buy it because I think I paid $7.99 for it and I got a $30 book. That makes no sense, but that's the way it's set up. So if you're familiar with Kindle, or I'm going to throw Audible in there, you can return or exchange a book you've already read. However, you can also subscribe, or if you want, 1 month free, then $9.99 per month. This comes with a caveat. In my opinion, the Kindle Unlimited library is very limited. So if you are signing up for Kindle, have you tried? Are you on that now?
Yeah.
You are? Okay. Yeah. So I doubt Such a Fun Age, which is a new book that came out that we reviewed. I doubt that's on there. Even Warmth of Other Suns, I'm doubting that's on there. So it's like a lot of public domain books, which makes me feel like, well, why would you even pay a subscription for books that are free to the public? But anyway, Number 3, Libby. Are you familiar with Libby?
Yeah, that's a connection to the library.
Yeah. So did you know your local library has thousands of ebooks and audiobooks? You can borrow them instantly for free. using just the device in your hand. Look in your hand, everybody. Anything there? Of course, there's a phone in it because phones are like permanently attached to our hands now. You can use that to download an ebook, and it's free, legit free. Sign into multiple libraries, even if you want, with one or more cards for each library. Download books and audiobooks for offline reading, or stream them to save space if you don't want to download them on your device. And if you prefer reading on your Kindle, Libby can even send your library book to it if you live in the United States. So that's a benefit. There is a downside, though, I guess. I mean, it is tied to whatever content your library has purchased. So it's limited.
Yeah, I think it's a great source because you can still borrow from other libraries and get books. That's
right. That's right. And newer books might have longer wait times, but they're still there. It's still available to download. Number 4, Overdrive. Overdrive is similar to Libby. They were created by the same people, but it's a little more archaic than Libby. And this can be a good thing because if your mom really likes ebooks, but she has a device from, 5 years ago, she might not be able to get the Libby app on her device. It may have, they may have phased out service for her device, but she could probably still download Overdrive. So that's the benefit for that. I wouldn't use it because it's not like cute. Libby is a real like millennial friendly app. It's like got colors and it's like game like. Overdrive is just more archaic for the old folks because they need to read.
Very basic.
It is.
It's very basic. But the library has that one too.
Yeah, exactly. Number 5, Hoopla, also through the library. It's similar to Libby, similar to Overdrive. Smaller catalog, but Hoopla's benefit is that it has unlimited copies of selected titles of ebooks, audiobooks, movies, and music. I've been using this app for years to borrow movies. So again, Hoopla, Hoopla. Have you heard of it?
Yep. Use it through the library.
Exactly. The library is like, I see why you love that place. I don't know how anybody making money with the library open. But anyway, there are no holds. You get it immediately. And then number 6, last on my list, public domain book sources. You guys, some of those books you love, some of those classics are so old that no one really owns the rights to them. That means no one should actually be making that much money off of them. You might see these as like $2.99 books on Amazon, on Kindle, or in bookstores, they'll be like deeply discounted and the cover will be something generic that the bookstore created. Those books are public domain books. They're free to the public, and you can use an aggregator such as Project Gutenberg to pull those books. So if you go to Gutenberg.org, that's G-U-T as in Tom, E-N as in Nancy, B as in boy, E-R-G.org, you can pull up a lot of these free books. Also, Google public domain books, and you'll get a list of different websites you can visit to pull your free book. I think go ahead.
It's not like an ebook?
It can be, but the ones I found are usually PDFs, to be honest. And
they're PDF.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can alternatively usually read them from the website. So for example, when we did Animal Farm, I forgot it at home. Mm-hmm. So I just Googled it and read it off of one of these websites while I was getting my nails done. Okay. Easy breezy. So that's the list. But then I also want to say there are things you can do now to support your indie bookstores. So check your local bookstore, your indie bookstores, social media accounts and see if if you call them now, they probably won't answer. So maybe email and see what options they have for you to still support them. Some are also teaming with, there's an app, I can't remember the name of it, but if you buy ebooks through that app for Volumes in Chicago, which is another bookstore, they get 100% of the proceeds from that purchase. So they may have even partnered with some app or program so as to keep them afloat during this time. It's really important that we support our indie bookstores now more than ever. So, exchange your books on Kindle. Do that because that's free. Mm-hmm. But buy your books from an indie bookstore. And that's it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Can we take a break?
I love that. Yep.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. And we're back. Welcome back, Alexis. I don't know how much time the warden says.
You.
I don't know how much time the warden says we have, but I'll try to make this quick. Can you please give us some context on Agatha Christie and maybe her inspiration for And Then There Were None?
Okay. All right. So here's what I know about Agatha Christie. She was born in 1890 in South Wales, England. She taught herself to read by the age of 5 and had no formal education until she was 16 or 17. She married her first husband in 1914 and had a child in 1916. And it was during the First World War that
Girl, you got it. World War, you got it.
to writing detective stories. Around 1916, her sister bet her that she couldn't write a good detective story. And her debut novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, was published in 1920 after being rejected by 6 publishers.
Wow.
It was her lifelong ambition to travel on the Orient Express. And during that time, she met her second husband, and that was in 1930. And she wrote 6 romance novels under the name Mary Westmacott. Yeah. In August of 1926, there's a story about her going missing for like 11 days.
Yeah.
I don't have the full details, and neither does anybody else. But she went missing.
I know what happened. She was done. She was tired. And she said, you know what? You're going to take me for granted? I got something for you. And so she went to the spot, pretended to be somebody else, even if she was pretending by herself.
Yeah, well, she pretended to be her husband was a philanderer, so she pretended to be the woman he was cheating with.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was dancing where she was at one of the balls, and one of the people in the band spotted her and called the police. Yeah.
Well, they were like, she was at the spot, and they was like, hey, Agatha, and she was like, oh, heavens no, darling. My name's Mary. Agatha, I'm reading your book right now. Who is this Agatha?
Like, no, that's not me.
That's not me.
No,
I got amnesia.
No, that's not me.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's what they said. She had amnesia. And so she's a very private woman. And in her autobiography, she didn't mention it at all. So that's not a thing to discuss, only in the tabloids.
Come on. Okay.
Yeah. So Agatha Christie is like the best-selling novelist of all time. She is best known for her 66 novels and 14 short story collections, as well as the world's longest-running play, The Mousetrap. And Then There Were None is Christie's best-selling novel. It has 100 million in sales. The book is the world's best-selling mystery ever and one of the best-selling books of all time. It's described as one of her most difficult books. I tried to find the reason why that was.
I read that it was the most difficult for her to write.
Yeah.
I could see that.
But why, though? Did you see that?
Well, I assume because everyone has a backstory, but they all have to come together and it all has to make sense at the end. And it's a whodunit where the reader could actually try to guess who it was, which is rare. Usually, like Murder on the Orient Express, there's no way you're going to guess who did it. It's not almost like he's pulling clues that the reader could never have been privy to. Whereas this book, you're given all the evidence and you could kind of guess as you go. And that is really rare. So that was probably really difficult to map together all those storylines.
Maybe. That sounds like a good reason, though. The first book, it was first published in 1939 as The 10 Little Niggers in the United Kingdom.
Guard. Let me talk to you.
They can't hear you. They can't hear
Come
you. You
again
know
now.
that, right?
What was the original name of this book you chose for us to read on this
The original.
podcast? Come again. Mm-hmm.
Right. The original title for this book was 10 Little Niggers, and it was based on a song that was adapted in 1868 by Frank J. Green by the same title.
It was a minstrel
song. Yeah, was used in minstrel shows throughout the world, and it was widely known in Europe. By the time it came to the U.S. a few months later, in January of 1940, we have the current title, and then there were none. And between 1964 and 1986, it was published under the title 10 Little Indians. The original island, just like in this book, it's called Indian Island. The original island was called Nigger Island.
I'm sorry, in your book, It's called what?
No, in the original book, it was called Nigger Island.
Yeah, but you said in your book, it's called Indian Island.
Yeah, my book is called Indian Island.
My goodness, what is the copyright on your racist book, Alexis? Where did you get this book? Okay, can I just
from the
say,
library?
This is why y'all need to stop going to the library. So in your hand is a book that says 10 Little Indians. That's the name of the poem.
I don't think the poem is written like that, but 10 Little Indians is throughout the poem. That's what it says. It doesn't say 10 Little Soldiers.
That's why you
Did you say 10 Little Soldiers?
Yes, of course. And they're on Soldier Island because we are in a modern time and we're not going to needlessly offend entire groups of people. I can't believe. I can't believe you was reading this book like, 10 Little Engines. This makes perfect sense. That's why you text me and said, what kind of book am I reading? And I thought, what does she mean? This is quite a pleasant novel. Okay, go ahead.
I absolutely said that after I had read that poem.
That's why you text me, what kind of book am I reading? And I'm just confused, thinking,
I think mine is the 1940 version.
I think so. Okay, go ahead.
My book. So that's all I have. I have about Agatha Christie, and then there were none.
All right.
That was some history.
And now, can you please give us a brief synopsis of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie? No spoilers, please.
Okay. 10 people head to Soldier Island after being enticed by a person named U.N. Owen. Shortly after they arrive, they hear an announcement that accuses each guest of a heinous murder. So, Kari, what were your first thoughts of this book?
So I accidentally read this book in a day because my first thoughts.
Accidentally?
Yeah, because I sat down to read 2 chapters, but I got so taken in by the story that I had to know how it ended. And so, 4 hours later, still sitting in that chair, dishes still not washed. It's okay. I'm on quarantine. So my first thoughts were, wow, and now how is she going to tie that to, oh, I see how she did it. Oh, this is amazing. Very good. My first thought was, I'm very interested in reading it. When I opened it up, could not put it down. What were your first thoughts?
I opened it up and put it down. Let me start with that. I read like 2 weeks ago the first, and they're really tiny chapters. So I read like the first few traveler introductions, and I wasn't drawn in. I don't know. That just did not capture me at all. By the time I got to that first poem, I was just like, what am I reading here? What am I reading?
Well, you've brought up before that Agatha always throws in, I've only read 2 Agatha Christie books, some racist in her book. Either something racist or someone racist. I was reading on Goodreads, people felt like that kind of tells you who Agatha was. But the thing is, the racist individual always gets rebuked, or it's to come across to the reader that this racist individual is ignorant. So I really think maybe Agatha had a
Oh.
thing with racist people. Okay, thank you. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, a deep dive into Then There Were None. Can you please give us a plot summary with all of the spoilers? And I must say, if you haven't read this book and you're interested in reading it, it's worth holding off, not listening to this particular episode until you finish, because the ending, whew. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the story begins with 8 characters in transit on their way to a town called Sticklehaven, where they're going to meet up, where they're going to take a boat to the mysterious island called Soldier Island, to meet their host or see their host, Mr. and Mrs. Owens. Some are traveling by car, some are traveling by train. They're going to this beautiful house, which is described as being really modern, the essence of modernity. And not all the house is not old, essentially. There's no creaking stairs, no dark shadows, no paneled walls. This is a very modern home. When they arrive at the island, they're greeted by the butler and his wife, who serves as the cook, and the wife serves as the cook and the housekeeper. And when they arrive, they're told their hosts are delayed and will arrive tomorrow. But in the meantime, they should make themselves at home. Each guest is taken to his or her room, and one guest, by the name of Vera Claythorne, who was invited to serve as a secretary to Mrs. Owen, she notices a nursery rhyme that hangs on the wall, and she recognizes this poem from her childhood. She feels like the poem is appropriate given
Their
the name of
location.
the island.
Yeah. 10 little soldier boys went out to dine. One choked his little self, and then there were 9. 9 little soldier boys sat up very late. One overslept himself, and then there were 8. 8 little soldier boys traveling in Devon. One said he'd stay there, and then there were 7. 7 little soldier boys chopping up sticks. One chopped himself in halves, and then there were 6. 6 little soldier boys playing with a hive. A bumblebee stung one, and then there were 5. 5 little soldier boys going in for law. One got in chancery, and then there were 4. 4 little soldier boys going out to sea. A red herring swallowed one, and then there were 3. 3 little soldier boys walking in the zoo. A big bear hugged one, and then there were 2. 2 little soldier boys sitting in the sun. One got frizzled up, and then there was 1. 1 little soldier boy left all alone. He went and hanged himself, and then there were none.
So the guests are kind of getting to know their space that they're in, their rooms, kind of walking around. They're preparing for dinner, not sure what to expect. They have drinks. Then they sit for dinner and relax and get to know each other. So let us get to know our characters a little more. Our first guest, Justice Wargrave. Justice Wargrave is a retired judge. Our second guest is Vera Claythorne, and she was invited, as I mentioned earlier, by Mrs. Owens to work as the secretary. She was happy to have this opportunity because she was standardly a governess and was looking for some summer work. Our third guest is Philip Lombard. I kind of was a little confused about how he got there, but he was sent there to work by Mr. Isaac Morris.
Right. For a job that would involve some violence.
Yeah.
Because Lombard is a mercenary.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then our fourth guest is Miss Emily Brent. She's about 65. She couldn't really see the name of the person that invited her. And she tried to think back to somebody that might have invited her with a last name O. All she saw was the UN. And so she kept calling the hostess Oliver, because she couldn't remember the name. And she's kind of identified as a very religious woman old spinster, that kind of thing. Our fifth guest is General Macarthur. He was invited up to meet up with old cronies and, and kind of talk about old times.
From the war, yeah.
And then there's Dr. Armstrong, who was invited to provide care for Mrs. Owens, who may be sick. And then Tony or Anthony Marston, he was invited through a friend to come up, thinking there was going to be good times had by all, like a party lifestyle. So he's like the youngest one in the bunch, it seems. And then there's a Mr. Davis, who was actually Mr. Bloor, and he is a former police investigator. And so he knows the names of everybody that's going to be there. So they're having dinner. Oh, I'm sorry. And then I forgot the manservant and
maidservant,
the cook and his wife. Yes, are Mr. and Mrs. Rogers. So these are the 10 people in the house. So before getting up from the table, they notice these 10 little soldier figures on the table, and everybody kind of identifies that there's 10 of them, and they think, okay, kind of goes with the theme. That's what Vera says. So after enjoying a fine dinner and relaxing a bit with the wine, they hear a voice accusing each of them of a very specific murder committed in the past.
Yeah, there's
and the
like
voice
a voice
said,
out of the Into that silence came the voice, without warning, inhuman, penetrating. Ladies and gentlemen, silence, please. Everyone was startled. They looked around at each other, at the walls. Who was speaking? The voice went on, a high, clear voice. You are charged with the following indictments. Edward George Armstrong, that you did upon the 14th day of March 1925 caused the death of Louisa Mary Cleese. Emily Carolyn Brent, that upon the 5th of November 1931, you were responsible for the death of Beatrice Taylor. William Henry Bloor, that you brought about the death of James Stephen Lander on October 10th, 1928. Vera Elizabeth Claythorne, that on the 11th day of August 1935, you killed Cyril Ogilvie Hamilton. Philip Lombard, that upon a date in February 1932, you were guilty of the death of 21 men, members of an East African tribe. John Gordon MacArthur, that on the 4th of January 1917, you deliberately sent your wife's lover, Arthur Richmond, to his death. Anthony James Marston, that upon the 14th day of November last, you were guilty of the murder of John and Lucy Coombs. Thomas Rogers and Ethel Rogers, that on the 6th of May 1929, you brought about the death of Jennifer Brady. Lawrence John Wargrave, that upon the 10th day of June 1930, you were guilty of the murder of Edward Sutton. Prisoners at the bar, have you anything to say in your defense?
So the first thing they try to do after they hear this voice is figure out where this voice is coming from. So they look, of course, to the butler, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers is like, hey, no, wait. I just followed some very specific instructions. It's a gramophone in the other room. So they find this gramophone with an album on it, and of course it's playing, and of course they wanted to stop playing. Mr. Rogers says when he arrived, which was actually 2 days before, he was given very specific instructions on when to play this recorded message, and it was while they were having coffee in the drawing room. So we learn, of course, at this point that Mr. and Mrs. Rogers have never actually met the host. And then after comparing notes with all the other guests, none of them have met the Owens. They all begin to start explaining their story of personal innocence, how these accusations are wrong against them, except 3 people. The first one is Mrs. Brent. She's like, I'm not even going to dignify that with a response.
Right.
And then there's Anthony Marston, who says, yeah, there were these kids. They just kind of ran out into the street. And I mean, I wasn't even going that fast, but they got hit and they died. But yeah, I mean, man, I got suspended for like a year for that. That was like the worst.
Yeah, my license.
So he was kind of in his feelings about that.
Yeah, my license got suspended. It was terribly inconvenient and bad luck. And someone was like, bad luck for them or for the kid, for you or for the kids that you killed. And he's like, well, for me, but I guess for them too. So he is supposed to be like the personification of privilege, and he's rich, he has access, and he's beautiful. And he's also a heavy drinker, and he drives recklessly. So on one of those drives, he killed 2 kids.
Yep. And then finally, Philip Lombard also says, I killed 21 people. That's just what I was doing. I was out for myself. That's what I did. They died. I don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, because they were natives in East Africa. So, yeah, he doesn't feel bad for that.
After hearing all this information, it's determined that the best thing for them to do is leave as soon as the boat arrives in the morning.
Wargrave said, I am not yet clear as to the purpose of our unknown host in getting us to assemble here. In my opinion, this person, whoever he may be, is not sane in the accepted sense of the word. He may be dangerous. In my opinion, it would be well for us to leave this place as soon as possible. I suggest that we leave tonight. Rogers said, I beg your pardon, sir, but there's no boat on the island. No boat at all? No, sir. How do you communicate with the mainland? Fred Narcott. He comes over every morning, sir. He brings the bread and the milk and the post and takes the orders. Mr. Justice Wargrave said, then in my opinion, it would be well if we all left tomorrow morning as soon as Narcott's boat arrives. There was a chorus of agreement with only one dissentient voice. It was Anthony Marston, who disagreed with the majority. A bit unsporting, what? Ought to ferret out the mystery before we go. Whole thing's like a detective story, positively thrilling, the judge said acidly. At my time in life, I have no desire for thrills, as you call them. Anthony said with a grin, the legal life's narrowing. I'm all for crime. Here's to it. He picked up his drink and drank it off at a gulp. Too quickly, perhaps. He choked badly. His face contorted, turned purple. He gasped for breath, then slid down off his chair, the glass falling from his hand.
So now that Anthony Marston has died, Dr. Armstrong believes that he was poisoned.
Okay, so Anthony is the one that killed the 2 kids.
Yes.
And he's choked on some alcohol, his drink.
Yep, he's choked on the alcohol that he's been drinking. He gulped too quickly and he chokes. And Dr. Armstrong, I guess, immediately addresses him, and he believes that he was poisoned because no one really dies of a choking fit. And the suggestion or the idea that someone like Anthony Marston, who we've just described as careless and, his importance is more than anyone else's, it's impossible that this guy would want to commit suicide. So that's not the answer. And then Vera immediately connects this Marston's death to the first verse of the nursery rhyme, which says, 10 little soldiers went out to dine. One choked his little self, and then there were 9.
Ooh. And it begins.
Anthony Marston, the carefree young guy, rich young guy, is now dead. And we're relating it to the poem. He was choked.
Oh, my goodness.
Choked. He was asphyxiated. Okay? All while this happens, when
if it ain't broke,
the
don't
gramophone
plays
plays.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
When the gramophone is going on, Mrs. Rogers really has a an immediate reaction. She like drops a tray of, I think it's coffee, and kind of passes out, right?
Screams, yeah.
She screams and passes out after hearing her and her husband have been accused of causing someone's death. She is actually pretty hysterical, and they pick her up and take her to the room. And Dr. Armstrong decides he wants to give her something to calm her down because she is really, truly upset. After she is down, the remaining 8 stay in the drawing room, and they stay up late discussing the day's events and then head to bed. Again, their plan is to leave with the first boat in the morning. The next morning, Mr. Rogers, the butler, calls Dr. Armstrong to his room. His wife hasn't woken. The doctor pronounces her dead.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite sure how she died. They go about with breakfast being prepared.
Was that
and then
crazy,
they tell
though?
everyone
Wait.
breakfast.
I'm so sorry.
Yes, it was.
It was, excuse me, I see your wife is dead. That's crazy. How long is breakfast going to take, though? That was crazy to me. Okay. Sorry, go ahead. These people selfish.
Right.
This is like a little clue that
selfish.
These aren't great people. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So they now know that Mrs. Rogers is dead. And they try to reason it out that maybe Mr. Rogers killed his wife because of the way she responded. That was pure guilt. And
she already looked nervous. Like her eyes were always shifting, and she was
pale.
Shaking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Like she has something to hide. So it was easy to believe that they did what was said. They did. And then the excuse that he gave for why they didn't do it, that didn't clock out right.
Right.
People didn't like that. So they were like ready to believe that Mr. Rogers killed his wife to shut her up.
He was saying we would have never killed the old lady we worked for because she was so good to us. And yeah, when she died, we inherited like a lot of her money, but that was just a coincidence. And it was given to us because we had worked so hard for her. Right.
That's what they said. So, but now there are 2 deaths. And Vera Claiborne now realizes that 2 of the statues are missing. Convinced now that they've been set up, they are again determined to leave. However, the boat that typically comes in the morning has not arrived. So Armstrong, Bloor, and Lombard are convinced that the host who invited them there is on the island. So they set out to find him. And they look everywhere on the island for him. Everyone is
they think
waiting.
He's knocking them off one by one. And so they're like, either he's going to keep us here and kill us all, or we got to find him. And it's a small island, so we can find him if we team up.
Right. And then I think somewhere in this time they find out that Lombard owns a revolver.
Yeah, he brought a gun. And this is in America.
And they're like,
this is
why would
England.
You bring
So people are shocked.
Why would you bring a gun to a vacation spot? Did you come here to do something else?
Yeah, exactly.
They're very unsure about that. But as a whole, the group, of course, minus Lombard and Emily Brent, seem to be more reflective about their experiences with these accused dead people, with the people they've been accused of killing.
You're right.
General Macarthur is especially reflective because he's accused of causing the death of his wife's lover. This was a man that was under him, and he was accused of sending him off to be killed.
Like David and Uriah in the Bible.
Yeah, because he knew that he was having an affair with his wife. And so he feels like he's been found out, and it's really essentially time to pay the price. And so while sitting by the sea and reflecting on this, Claiborne kind of walks up to him, and General MacArthur, admits that he has killed his wife's lover. And he also tells her that we're not leaving this island. No one is.
Exactly. He's actually decided in his heart that he doesn't want to leave the island. He wants this to be the end for him. He's tired of his guilt.
Right. Yep. The guilt has kind of been holding him. So the gong is rung. Is it a gong? I feel like they said it was.
Yeah,
but some kind of bell is rung for lunch. Because the house is big, the island is big, you want to kind of hear it. So they ring the gong, and everyone heads back to the table. Everyone except General MacArthur. He was out by the sea, so they're thinking, well, he probably wouldn't hear it because he's out by the sea, kind of out there reflecting. Dr. Armstrong goes out to get General MacArthur to bring him back for lunch. Soon after, he comes racing back to the house and says, General MacArthur is dead. The MacArthur death leaves everyone speechless.
Shocked.
Speechless.
Yeah.
But they also note there are only 7 statues on the table.
So there
General
were 10
MacArthur
statues.
Hit on the head.
There were 10 statues in the middle of the dinner table, and as they're dying, these statues are inexplicably disappearing.
Disappearing, yeah. And since the entire island was just searched, Justice Wargrave says there's only one conclusion. Mr. Owen is actually one of us. Yes. And that we've actually been invited here for some type of execution of justice style against these offenses. Justice Wargrave suggests that they simply consider the facts. Everyone has had an opportunity to commit the 3 murders that have occurred, and the killer is obviously dangerous and criminally insane. So you all can be a potential Mr. Owen.
Yeah, no one is exempt.
Meanwhile, folks start to make a decision about who they start. I feel like they're making alliances at this point, kind of siding up. Just a few of them, like any kind of reality TV show. Some say Dr. Armstrong, and then some say Mr. Rogers, and some say even Justice Wargrave. But also on this island, the weather is starting to take a turn. And with the weather taking a turn, that means no boats can get to the island. That delays any traffic or opportunity for them to leave the island. No one is going to come to save them, so they're essentially sitting ducks. Everyone needs to be on full alert. They go to bed. The next day, people start moving about, but Mr. Rogers hasn't called anyone for breakfast, so they head out to search for him. They head to the dining room, and Vera immediately notices that there are only 6 statues in the middle of the table, and they find him shortly thereafter. He was chopping sticks in preparation for starting the kitchen fire. Mr. Rogers has been chopped. That wasn't funny.
No.
As the guests deal with the shock
we
of
gotta
another
stop
death.
reading these murder mysteries. It's messing with
I know.
sense of humor.
Vera Claythorne. Exactly. As the guests deal with the shock of another death, Vera Claythorne is on the verge of hysteria and asks, do they keep any bees on the island? They're like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And she insists that they need to pay attention to the poem because that'll tell them what's next. 7 little soldier boys chopping up sticks. One chopped himself in half, and then there were 6. 6 little soldiers playing with the hive. A bumblebee stung one, and then there were 5. Dr. Armstrong strikes her on the cheek, and she says, "Thank you, I'm all right now."
Yeah, he hit her for speaking reason.
That's like standard. But it's usually a woman slapping somebody, right?
Right.
But I think that's common in those days, right? They just pop people.
Okay.
Vera Claythorne now heads into the kitchen with Emily Brent. She had been avoiding her because Emily Brent has shared her story. The story that she would not share with everyone else in that room, she explains what happened in her scenario.
To Vera.
With the person she is accused of killing, yes, to Vera only. Because she felt like it was, something that men didn't need to hear. So she wanted to, just share that with Vera. So she shares that story of what happened.
Emily Brent continued thoughtfully. Beatrice Taylor was in service with me. Not a nice girl, as I found out too late. I was very much deceived in her. She had nice manners and was very clean and willing. I was very pleased with her. Of course, all that was the sheerest hypocrisy. She was a loose girl with no morals. Disgusting. It was some time before I found out that she was what they call in trouble. She paused, her delicate nose wrinkling itself in distaste. It was a great shock to me. Her parents were decent folk, too, who had brought her up very strictly. I'm glad to say they did not condone her behavior, Vera said, staring at Miss Brent. What happened? Naturally, I did not keep her an hour under my roof. No one shall ever say that I condoned immorality, Vera said in a lower voice. What happened to her? Miss Brent said, the abandoned creature, not content with having one sin on her conscience, committed still a graver sin. She took her own life, Vera whispered, horror-struck. She killed herself? Yes, she threw herself into the river. Vera shivered. She stared at the calm, delicate profile of Miss Brent. She said, what did you feel like when you knew she'd done that? Weren't you sorry? Didn't you blame yourself? Emily Brent drew herself up. I had nothing with which to reproach myself, Vera said. But if your hardness drove her to it, Emily Brent said sharply. Her own action, her own sin. That was what drove her to it. If she had behaved like a decent, modest young woman, none of this would have happened.
So now we kind of get an impression of Emily Brent as a very rigid and religious person that has no mercy, right? So when they're in the kitchen now, they're starting to prepare breakfast because now you have Mr. Rogers dead and Mrs. Rogers dead. The women, of course, go into the kitchen, right? Of course, go into the kitchen and prepare the meal. With 4 deaths, they start rumbling about a possible killer. And then Emily Brent is now considered a suspect because they consider her a religious fanatic. She's got this overly righteous air. So as they prepare breakfast, Emily Brent encourages Vera to stay calm. As you know, she just kind of freaked out. And Vera asks, aren't you afraid of dying? And Emily says, she's not going to die. The others would, but not her. And she had never done anything of which to be ashamed of. So naturally, why would Emily Brent die? So they finish up breakfast and they serve it to everyone. Everyone's fine. They're engaging in meals, almost as if things are normal. But in their minds, they're like, who's next? What's going to happen? Who did that? Did he believe me? There's all kinds of things. The book is sharing us some of the thoughts that are going through the people's minds.
Right.
And after breakfast, they agree, let's meet up and we're going to discuss what's happened in about a half an hour. After breakfast, Emily Brent, she wanted to assist Vera in the kitchen, but she was feeling a little giddy. I guess that's a bad thing because she needed to sit down. Dr. Armstrong wanted to offer her something, and she immediately refuses. Well, now, as you know, they think Dr. Armstrong is poisoning people. So don't nobody want nothing from him.
Right.
Everybody's afraid.
Right.
So when it was time for the meeting, everyone was accounted for except Emily Brent. When they go back to look for her, they see a bee in the house, and Emily Brent is dead.
Oh, my goodness.
In the chair that they left her in.
The old lady, the fanatic, has died.
Yes.
Wow.
She's been poisoned by injection. Again, suspicion on Dr. Armstrong. He's highlighted as a killer. They're like, we need to check your bag. You holding stuff.
Well, yeah, because
He's
4
like,
people are
yeah,
dead now.
I got a needle.
Yeah, exactly. So 4 people are dead now. The first died after drinking something. It seems to be death by cyanide, which only a doctor would have. He did give something to Mrs. Rogers to help her sleep. She got too much of it and she died. They don't know about the Mr. Rogers getting chopped in half. And then the old lady is poisoned with a needle. So only a doctor would have a needle.
Yeah, so this is like, that's enough. We sick of you. Give us all your stuff. We know you got stuff. Give it to us. So they decide to, and actually Wargrave suggested this, I believe, pull out all the implements of death. Whatever y'all got, give it to us. We're going to put it in a pile and hide it. Right. So they take all of his drugs and whatever drugs are in the house, and they take Lombard's revolver, and they go to look for it, and the revolver is gone.
Right.
It's not in the place. That's kind of shocking. Well, that is. It's just shocking. Why is your revolver missing? Also, why do you have a revolver? That still concerns us. That's what the people are thinking.
Exactly.
All the drugs are stored and put away. They give a key to Lombard and they give a key to Bloor. Now, if you recall, Bloor is the ex-inspector, but he's involved in all the searching of the house, just kind of helping with cleanup when it comes to dead bodies, taking them back to the bed. They give them a key because they're supposed to be the biggest of it too. That, if you have to fight them to get it, you're not going to win. It's not going to happen if they got to fight each other.
Yeah, they're in shape. So so Davis was actually Bloor, and Bloor is an ex-police detective. And then this mercenary, Lombard, is also a muscular, man of, imposing structure. So they are seen as the 2 physically fit gentlemen in the group.
Yeah. No one can mess with them. So as I mentioned, they're looking all over the house for this revolver, and they just, nothing is found. And I believe that at this point, is this when they're searching people and saying you got to strip your clothes off?
Yeah, everyone gets naked.
And they're in their robe.
Yeah, everyone has to either wear a dressing gown or towel while they go through all their stuff, while everyone else goes through your things.
Yeah, and you just stand there and watch. And everybody gets it. No special cases. Woman, you also put on something because we checking everything.
Right.
Wargrave also reminded everybody, you can't find this gun. Be careful. Stay together. They can't get us if we're all together. The scene is now set. There's 5 that remain, and it's all about self-preservation because everybody's nervous. Everybody's questioning everything. They're like animals in a pen. The weather was still bad. There's no hope of let up. There's no hope of getting off this island. Everybody is on edge.
Right.
They're no longer having meals prepared for them. They're like, go in the kitchen. I think they were eating tongue, whatever was canned.
Yeah,
they were eating canned food. Going in the kitchen, cooking up, opening up a can, eating. And when somebody wanted coffee, they all went in the kitchen to have the coffee because they didn't want no one wanted to be poisoned by anyone. They were just extra high, alert, aware of what was going on, and they were truly trying to protect themselves.
Right.
So they realized this one evening that there's no light. To go to turn on the light switch, there's no light. Mr. Rogers was out there cutting. He never had the opportunity to come in and kind of set everything up with light.
Right.
So they
he
have
was
to work
cutting
with
wood
candles
for the fire, but because he died or was chopped in half and no one else had the wherewithal to cut their wood, they just completely forgot about it. And now they're sitting in the dark.
It sounds ridiculous, but that's what happened, okay, folks?
Right.
They sitting in the dark. They're like, what are we going to do? They go get candles. All right. So they go and they gather up these candles. And Vera decided, I've had enough. I can't sit in this room anymore. this is just really hard. Their situation is really difficult. They on edge. She's like, I'm going upstairs. I'm going to take a bath. All right? I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. Y'all stay here. I'm going in my room, close the door. So she heads upstairs with a candle and closes them in the drawing room. And when she gets up to the room, she finds a scent reminiscent of her time back when she was caring for young Cyril, the child she is accused of killing. Anyway, she said he was naughty.
So he was always asking Hugo, Cyril, the little boy that she used to be the governess of, would always ask to go swimming by the rocks, which were far out into the water. And he had this like annoying high voice. Now it seems like everyone else really loved Cyril, but his governess, who was Vera. But yeah, that was her thing with the boy she used to govern.
Yeah. But she also thinks about what happened to Hugo, the uncle. What happened to them? I thought we were in love. What happened? He just kind of disappeared. Why aren't we together? And while doing this, reflecting, the candle goes out, and she's standing in this room, and she's looking to light the candle, and she starts to feel something clammy touch her throat, and she screams bloody murder. She screams at the top of her lungs, and the men come running. The remaining men, that is, so that's the 4 men downstairs, to see what's happening to her. When the men arrive, Vera collapses on the floor, and the men notice the seaweed hanging from the ceiling. Seaweed hanging from the ceiling.
Inexplicably, right.
Why is that a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Vera realized it must have been the seaweed that touched her neck, and she's relieved. But she still feels a little faint, so they offer her some brandy. But she's not, no one's taking anything from anybody. They didn't see where it came from. So that's not going to happen.
Right,
she's
they
like,
go
just
open
give
a
me
new
some
bottle.
water, okay?
No, they go open a new bottle.
Yeah. Yeah, they say, I'll take somebody says, I'll go run and get a new bottle. She's like, just give me some water, okay? That'll be better. Then she realizes, wait, where's the judge? Where's Wargrave?
Uh-oh.
But they didn't realize Wargrave wasn't with him. They thought he came running up the stairs with him, all together, because they were supposed to be all together. The men thought about it. He wasn't with them, so they go to look for Wargrave. They head back downstairs to the drawing room, and they find Wargrave dead. He's dressed in a wig and a red shower curtain.
Wait,
with a stain mark on his forehead from which something had trickled. That's how it's described in the book, y'all. But he's dead, okay? He's dead. Dr. Armstrong rushes over, raises his limp hand, felt his pulse, and, of course, pronounces him dead and says, he's been shot. Laura says, with the revolver. Gunshot
so the missing revolver has killed the judge.
Revolver.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. But the revolver was not left in the room by the murdered man. It's not a thing. The revolver is still nowhere to be found.
Mm-hmm.
Shocked, though, they did not hear a gun. But Laura explains that it's likely because of all the screaming and the running up of stairs. All of that would have blocked the hearing of a gunshot. The line from the poem is repeated. It seems as they begin to know who the killer might be, they're proved innocent with their death. 5 little soldiers going in for law. 1 got in chancery, and then there were 4.
Does it bother you that law and 4 don't rhyme?
Yes, it does. Very much so. I just read that out loud, and I was like, wait, that doesn't rhyme. It doesn't rhyme, folks. I don't know what happened there. They head to bed, and they locked the doors behind them. There's 4 people left. They're messed up. They can't sleep. They're going to their rooms, and they still have time to reflect. This private time, Vera's mind goes to Hugo and Cyril, where she tells him to go out to swim in the big rocks and we'll surprise your mother when you are standing up on the big rock. Again, as you recall, Cyril wasn't supposed to go out there to swim because he wasn't strong enough, but he wanted to prove himself. And Vera encouraged him to go out there. So she wonders if Hugo suspected that maybe she sent the child out there. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So Cyril was the little boy that Vera governed. Cyril had an uncle named Hugo. Hugo was in line to inherit a bunch of money. But when Cyril's dad died, his mom was unexpectedly pregnant with Cyril, the little boy. So when Cyril was born, he inherited the money that Hugo was supposed to get, and Hugo was broke. Hugo didn't seem to mind this except that he couldn't marry, really, because he was penniless, and he would be filthy rich if it wasn't for the little boy. It was like the Lion King. You know how Scar is like, I would be king if you didn't come around. Except imagine that Scar really likes, what was his name? Whatever. What's the kid name?
Cyril.
No, in the Lion King. Simba.
Oh.
Imagine that Scar and Simba are like kicking it all the time, and Scar really loves Simba, even though Simba's getting his inheritance. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
so
Vera really wanted to be married to Hugo because he was like, fine. Mm-hmm.
The idea of sending out this child to swim where we already know that he's not strong enough to go that length really, really doesn't do well for Vera because she's a murderer.
Yeah. Yep, that's what happened.
Blore. Mm-hmm. Blore thinks about the victim he's accused of killing. His name is Landor. Now, it wasn't really clear to me why he would have killed Landor, but it sounds like he was a bad cop. Blore was this ex-inspector. He was a bad cop. And so he kills this man, but during this time, he has an opportunity to reflect about the family. That this man that died after he had put away on trumped-up charges, he had a wife and a 14-year-old daughter. And he wonders what happened to them.
Yeah, so
Lander was innocent.
The ex-cop would also, he had a temper he wouldn't control, and he would also get involved, and it sounds like some organized crime maybe. Like maybe you could hire him to kill someone that you didn't want talking. Yeah.
Oh, he was dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when Blore had Lander, an innocent guy, put away, he dies later in prison because he fell sick. Of course, the idea that he fell sick isn't really his fault, but the fact that he had him in prison and he died, he wasn't with his family, all those things make him, a murderer.
Yeah.
And so while reflecting, Blore hears footsteps outside the door. He's like, wait a minute, what's going on? He opens up the door and he sees Dr. Armstrong running down out the door. And so after he hears that, he goes back to get Lombard, and they follow him out to kind of see where he's going, And they tell Vera to stay in the room. Don't come out. They return and they say they can't find Dr. Armstrong. He goes missing. They recite the poem. Well, I think Vera brings it up. Vera brings up the poem, 4 little soldier boys going out to sea. A red herring swallowed one, and then there were 3.
Soldier boy, tell him.
Lombard tells Blore his revolver was returned to him. How? Houseway. Okay, how'd you get that back?
Ooh.
They look all over for Dr. Armstrong and determine not only is he missing, but he's the killer. We think he did it.
Mm-hmm.
They think he's missing because it's actually a red herring. So such as the poem says. This is an idea that kind of puts you off a little bit. They notice a pane of the window had been. Say it again.
It's a false clue.
Yeah. They notice a pane of the window has been smashed, but there are still only 3 statues remaining. The next day, they say, you know what? We can't stay in this house anymore. I've had enough. We're going to go out to the cliff outside, and we're going to send SOS signals in hopes that someone will see. Someone will have to see this. Even though they feel that it's completely hopeless to try, they're determined to do it. They're going to do it anyway. They want to get off this island. And while outside, Blore decides that he's hungry. Now, Blore has been hungry the whole book, okay? He's always wants to eat. Yeah. I'm not mad at him. I would be hungry, too. This is stressful. But while he's outside, he's like, I'm hungry. I want some tea or something. Don't y'all want something? They're like, nah. Did you do this? You must have killed everybody. You hungry all the time. That's how they came from him.
Clearly, you're the murderer, because murderers always be hungry. Shoot.
Exactly. Nobody else wants to go back to the house. They like, the fact that everybody's getting murdered, I don't want to eat. Right. But you want to eat? That's a problem, sir. Lombard said, it's like feeding time at the zoo, okay? Blore walks back to the house because he's hungry, right? And then shortly after that, they hear a sound. Now, I'm referring to Lombard and Vera. They're still outside, but they hear a sound back at the house, almost like the sound of an earthquake. So they go to see, and they find Blore is dead.
Oh, my goodness.
He's been crushed.
He ain't hungry no more.
By a block of white marble that's in the form of a bear. And that's just above Vera's room. It fell from Vera's room. They believe Armstrong did it. They head back to the cliff and they see some clothes floating. They go down to look and figure out what these clothes are, and they find out that it's Dr. Armstrong's body lodged between 2 rocks, and he's dead. Together, they pull him from the shore, and Vera leans in to kind of help him pull and tug the body because it's just the 2 of them.
So now it's Vera and Lombard left.
Vera and Lombard. Everybody else is dead. They now officially know that Dr. Armstrong is dead. They've pulled him in, Vera and Lombard together. Lombard turns around and realizes his revolver is not in his pocket. And he looks up to see Vera pointing at him.
Ooh.
He had underestimated her. He really did. He said, give me the revolver. He leapt for it, and she shot him. Lombard was dead.
Dang.
Vera is the only one standing. She's like, I'm relieved. Oh, my goodness, I'm so relieved.
Yeah, her first thought is kind of like, this island ain't so bad when you're the only one left on it.
Yes. That is her thought. She's like, I'm alone on the island. There's 9 dead bodies. You know, there's nothing to fear anymore. I'm good. Mm-hmm. You know, this is kind of a great place. I like this spot. Dead bodies and all. Now she's hungry and sleepy. So she goes back. She goes back to the house. She's going to get her something to eat. She returns to her room. She's thinking she's going to get some real sleep, some peace. And she thought about tomorrow that she would just be rescued. She notices the remaining 3 statues on the table. And she wonders how it ends and says, one little soldier left out alone. He got married, and then there were none. That's how she remembered the poem. She heads upstairs. She still has the revolver in her pocket. But as she heads upstairs, the revolver falls out. She's kind of got this haze about her. She's kind of reflective, and she's remembering Hugo.
Like by her memories and by the events over the last few days, and she's not in her right mind anymore.
No. Yeah. So she's walking up the stairs. As I said, the revolver falls out, and she has one of the statues in her pocket, and that she drops. And when she gets to her room, she sees a chair. and the noose above. She walks to the chair and stands on it, telling herself, this is what Hugo will want. And she hangs herself. Vera is dead.
And then there were none.
The police arrived the next day. Some Boy Scouts saw the SOS signal, but no one could get to the island. Right? No one could get to the island right away. The sea levels were still very high, so they had to wait I think it was still a few days after she died that they came to the island. They're at a loss for what happened, but they were able to grab some diaries and piece a story together, but still it remains a mystery. The mystery of the deaths on Soldier Island baffles the police until a message in a bottle turns up. The late Justice Wargrave wrote a manuscript explaining how he planned the murders because he wanted to punish those whose crimes are not punishable under law. He even admits his own lust for blood. We find out that Wargrave was dying, and instead of just laying down and just letting death happen, he decides to die in a blaze. He explained how he murdered all, and he even tricked Dr. Armstrong into helping him fake his own death, and then promising to meet him off the cliff. But when he met him, he pushed him off the cliff. Then returned to the house and pretended to be dead. The plan was that he would shoot himself, and then it would look like the body fell in bed.
Yeah, so he shot himself in a way where the gun was not near his hand once he released the trigger. He had it like tied to this rubber string. And so when he killed himself, the gun was in the doorway, I think. Anyway, it looked as if someone had shot him and dropped the gun.
Yeah. What a story.
Yeah.
The end. Let's take a break.
Okay, sounds good.
And we're back. Wasn't that intriguing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Kari.
Yeah.
Let's hear your final verdict.
Oh, this book is really good. So I would say that this is my favorite murder mystery I've ever read. Well, one of them. And I love how there are layers that Agatha had to think through, and I thought she did really well. Like, all of these people are joined together because they committed murders in which they cannot be punishable by law. Because, for example, Vera told that boy to swim out into the rocks and he drowned, and she took her time trying to swim to him, but she made it look like she almost drowned herself trying to save him, to the point where the boy's mother didn't even blame her. So that was murder, even though she can't be punished for it. And so to think about how these people were killers, everyone actually but the judge. So the judge feels like, you idiots should have known it was me because I'm the only one here that's not a murderer. So if y'all had came out like, hey, all these accusations are true, except the judge has, because he's the only innocent one, ironically, he must be the murderer. But they didn't. So, I really liked it. It was really good. I finished it and was ready for more. I would love a part 2. I don't know. Anyway, it was really good.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
What about you? What's your I would highly recommend it. What's your final verdict?
I loved it. I really did. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it immensely after I got past the poem. The first death literally took me out. I'm like, wait. I mean, we was just talking. What?
Yeah.
What happened here? What happened? Mm-hmm. And then from there on, I was like, wow. I mean, what's next? Now, I could put it down, and probably because I was tired, but I could put it down I was still intrigued. I was still drawn in by it. There's no colorful words. I like how she just gets in there and just tells a story.
Yeah, there wasn't a huge setup. It was just enough. And the show got on the road as soon as they all got in the house. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, in the beginning, although that was slow for me, and I think I also went back and I took a lot of notes in that section too, because I was trying to figure out what should I be understanding. And as I read through later, I probably didn't need to take as many notes because it was kind of a little bit repeated throughout. So that was good. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And I, in fact, hope people read it before they listen to it so they can give us some commentary about their thoughts as well. For the book. It is an easy read. And you know I don't be saying that. It's an easy read.
It is. Agatha's really good for that. She doesn't overcomplicate things, but she explained the story really well. Characters were fleshed out. There was depth there. Yeah, great pick. Great pick, Alexis. Okay, so that was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Great pick, Alexis. Thank you for listening to Lit Society. We'll see you next Thursday. Lit Society is brought to you by Alexis Honoria and Kari Herrera. Support the cause by leaving a 5-star review for our show on Apple Podcasts. If you didn't love the audio quality today, well, you know what? Forget you, because we're doing our best under quarantine. We literally can't leave the house, you guys.
Okay.
We're really trying. Also, if you've enjoyed what you've heard, tell a friend about Lit Society. You know, text them, because you probably can't leave your house right now either. Visit litsocietypod.com for show notes, this month's book list, and to sign up for our amazing email newsletter. Oh, I also want to give a shout out to everyone who bought something from our store. So last weekend, we opened up our store, which is usually only available to like family and friends, to the public. That was exciting, and people supported us and bought our merch. So maybe we'll do that again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. We bought a lot of our own merch, but we didn't know if anyone would be interested in like wearing Lit Society shirts. We love our cute logo, so it's nice to you guys love it too. That really touched our hearts and brought us some happiness while we were stuck inside. So thanks for supporting our store. So that's it.
It did.
Yeah. So until next time, read something.